Hello and welcome to the video. I'm Jimmy the Mower and today we're going to be stripping down, ready for service, this Ransomes Magna 250 cutting head. A few general hints then before we start. Tools you'll require: a 19mm spanner and socket, 24mm spanner, I think we can get in there. I don't think we can get a socket in there. A 30mm is about as big as we'll need. The smallest we'll need is a 13, just for taking the bits off the edge. I always use a hefty screwdriver or a pry bar if I can. Just sometimes some things need a little bit of squeezing out, so that's what you need that for. And then a small hammer, just in case something needs a bit of persuasion. Right, there's also some gloves on the side. If you're messing around with grease and heavy oil on a regular basis, it's always advisable to wear some latex gloves if you can. Right, this cutting head itself is off a Ransomes Parkway, right? If you don't know how to get these off your actual Parkway itself, there is a short video on that. You can go and have a look. It's no different to a Ransomes Parkway 3 to a Ransomes Parkway 2250. It goes all the way back through every generation. They're all the same up to the Parkway 3. So they're easy to take off. You just have to do it in a safe and methodical manner. Once they're off, we've got this here. We need to strip this down so we can regrind the cylinder and regrind the bottom blade. If you're halfway through a season and they're just going for a regrind in the case, you can get them down to this level and you can just take them away and they will do it for you, bring them back and everything will be great. Put them back on your machine, that's no problem. However, depending on your hours, at least once a season you could do with stripping the whole thing down, replacing the bearings, the bottom blade, other bits and pieces, and just making sure it's all running as good as it can be to give you a fantastic cut for the following season. Okay then, with these nuts and bolts removed, we've got a bit of flex in the roller there. This is how we actually adjust the height, by moving these up and down. I think this is a 17. We'll get back in. Yeah, it is. We'll undo that. Now, things are coming together or coming apart quite easily. It doesn't always work like that. I put these cutting units back together myself the start of this season. And when I put them back together, I copper slipped everything when it went in. And before I took them apart, I put some release spray on there as well. So if you have any problems, soak it well in release spray. We use some, it's on the shelf behind us, you always see it knocking about. We soak it well in release spray so they come apart, and we copper slip it well when they go back together. Now, that's just come off there quite easily. There's just one little thing we need to get out, and that's come out easily as well. Is that there, and that's the height adjuster. So that sits in there and pivots round on the bolt. As we move the rear roller up and down, that turns round. Now, we keep this with the rear roller, so we'll put that back on the bolt and we'll put that little bolt back in there. Okay, now we try and keep things together. You'll see I've got a bucket with number 1. This is our cutting head number 1, and we've got a bucket, and all the hardware and all the bits and pieces go from this into that bucket, so we know that they're all together. With a rear roller, we keep everything with a rear roller together, so this will go back on, and then I'll put the nuts and bolts through here as well. You don't have to use the same nuts and bolts, it just depends how your season goes. Sometimes they're quite worn, and we just use different ones, new ones at the beginning of every season. They don't cost a lot of money, do they? So you can replace them whenever you like. So that one's that off. I'm going to turn it round, get the other one off, and then we've just got the main cutting head itself. Now we've got rid of the rear roller assembly, we can start to take apart the cutting head itself to get the cylinder out. Here's my little parts bucket. I've got number 1 written on there. You can take this apart in various ways depending on what you'd like to do. What I normally do is take this off first, probably. We take this off. This is a cast iron bar, and that connects to the roller assembly and allows it to adjust. I think that is a 30mm. So it's got a 30mm, and it goes into the block that holds the bottom blade carrier, and that's in, and it's tapped all the way through. There's no nut on the end, it's just screws in there, and that's done. We take this off, and then that releases here these 2 nuts, and you can get at those quite easily, and that will give us access to our bottom blade carrier itself, so we can undo those. This might take a bit of getting off, Might have to get a block of wood and jam underneath here to do it, but we'll see. Oh no, that's it. Quite easy this time. Well, the thing is, as I said before, we copper slip everything up. So when this copper slips up, they do tend to come apart a little bit easier. I can see the copper on here. But you have to be mindful all the time that your cutting units may not have been taken apart for some while. They might have been taken apart by somebody and not put back together properly. They might have been taken apart and not greased up. You can probably see a little bit of copper shine on there when I move it round. So that's in there. And then we've got our first washer stroke spacer. Now these are a little bit dirty, but we just pop them in the bucket and clean those up when we come to it. Now that's that bit out of the way. And now with these here, I think these are 17s again. I'll just have a check. Yeah, 17s again. I'm not sure if we can get the socket in. Yes, we can. On some of the older units, when they start to wear, we get this little bit, these skids here, bend up. When they get bent up at the end, it prevents us getting a socket in, and it makes it very difficult to get the bottom blades off. We have to undo these and move them down slightly out the way. Bit of heavy engineering. If you need some persuasion, you've always got this by your side. So with that done, I can get this bottom blade carrier off. Again, that's quite easy really. You can use an impact driver or an impact wrench, but you've got to be careful. If the things are stuck, put some penetration spray in there, because what happens is the rust forms and it locks the threads together. It's just locked in that hole. The penetration spray gets in there, goes down, lubricates that. You put an impact driver on, a very weak one, not a great big impact wrench. You put it on and it'll spin those and it'll just break it and it'll just spin the top off. And that's no good to anybody. You spend all day drilling it out and tapping it again. So you use an impact driver and you basically vibrate it and shake it, and that breaks it all loose. And the rust's loose, put some more spray on there, and then you can get a socket on and it'll come off. 9 times out of 10 that works. Right, so that's that one done. Again, I'll try this one. You can hear that, it's a little bit tight, a little bit squeaky in there. These units are running in the wet, they're grass, mud, everything all day long. So they're bound to get a bit gunged up, aren't they? Right, I'll take these out most of the way, and then we'll turn this round and we'll do the other side, and then I'll show you the bottom blade carrier when it's out. Well, isn't it always the way? The other end took a little bit of doing, bit of persuasion. We had to get the hammer out and a breaker bar, but we did it in the end. Now, this is the bottom blade itself, and it sits there on the bottom blade carrier, which is here. These screws, they take some getting in and some getting out. They're quite shallow, very fine thread. I'll do this in a separate video, removing these, replacing the bottom blade, the order to do it in, and then grinding it up on a machine. If you can't grind it up, you can shim it up, but it is best to have them ground if you can. Right, I'll put this to one side then, and we'll know that this is with number 1. We'll mark it up on the top, and then we'll start to get to work on the rest of this cutting head. Next on the agenda then is taking off the height adjuster. Now, this is what we turn round, and this lifts the cylinder up and down slightly, real slight increments, and you adjust this up to get it to meet the bottom blade properly. However, to get the cylinder out, we need to take this boss here off the end. This is where the drive spline goes in from the motor. So as you can see, there's plenty of grease in there, so it's been well maintained. I should hope so, because it's my machine, so it's been well maintained. So there's plenty of grease in there, but this is where the drive spline goes in, and this is an end boss, right? So what we have to do to free this off is take this off here. I think that's a 17, or is it a 19? I'm not sure. It's a 19. So these two are 19s, this one and this one. And then on the back, there's quite a big bolt. I'm not sure if these newer Magna 250 cutting heads have got the keyway in them. But that one on the back is either a 22 or a 24 when we get there. Some of them have a keyway, which stops them turning, which makes it easier to undo these nylock nuts on the front. Others don't, and you have to get a spanner in down the back. It is a little bit tricky, especially to show you on camera. I'll try and get a still of that one, and we can put that in and then undo it. And once these are all undone, we can take this off here, and then that just we can see the end of the cutting cylinder itself. Then we have to turn it round. We do the same the other end. The other end's slightly different. There's a boss on there, and that holds some bearings in a bearing housing. This one's been driven, so it's pushing all the time, and then it pushes against the far end where the bearings are, so it's always a tight fit and a true sort of spin on there when you go round, so it's always spinning exactly how it should do. So we'll take this one off first, put the parts in our little bucket, and then we'll see what we've got, and then hopefully spin it round and we'll get the other side off. Now again, everything was copper slipped up when it went together, but it doesn't always guarantee it coming apart easily. You have to be a bit delicate with these, because they're fairly robust, but again, this is a little bit of cast in the middle, and even though you think they're robust and they've got a lot of strength to them, you can tap them the wrong way. I have broke them before in the past by trying to get them off. You just turn around and they put themselves under so much pressure that they'll just sort of snap quite easily. So just be mindful of that. It's crazy, because you're out mowing, playing fields and verges and whatever all day, day in, day out, and you're going along, and I've never really I have broke one in action once. I think I hit the underneath of a bench with the top of this, and it did snap it. But apart from that, you never break one, but we've broke many of these in the workshop when we're doing them up or undoing them. Now, let's see if I can get the 19 on here and get this off. And you know what? I think I've got a keyway in mine. Oh, no, I haven't. He started to spin. Right, I'll tell you what it is. What have I got? I've got 24 there. Is that a 24? Yeah, it's a 24. Right, I'll put the 24 in. So that's that. Not a lot of thread on there. Considering it's a nylock, it didn't go in very far, did it? Because we soon turned it off. There's a little washer on there. So those go in there. And then there's a little spacer. Now these spacers, they fit in, as you can see, and they just make sure everything's centralised. They're very important, these spacers. Some great engineering on these, little conical shape inside so it fits perfectly in there. So that goes in there. Now we'll get off the one down the bottom. We might struggle to remove the bolt from the back of here. It's easier to pull it out from the front. The bolt being at the back is banging against the cylinder. There are some holes drilled into the cylinder at various points, and when we slide that back, we make sure we match it up with the hole and we can slide it through. And again, when we're putting it back together, we slide it in through that hole and it makes it a lot easier. Now, let's have a go at this bottom one. We were lucky with that one, didn't have to grip it the other side with a spanner. That's come off. Now, these bolts, I try not to hit them too hard or with something that's very hard. I might have to just have a quick look round for a piece of wood or use the bottom of the hammer. We need to push that through. This one's not going to go on there because it's against the cylinder. Now, this is where it starts to take a bit of messing about and a bit of prizing. As I say, we break more of these getting them on and off than we do in action all the time. So I'll just move that down. You can probably see it's moving that. I don't know if you can see it. We're just trying to adjust it so it takes some tension off. And I have to get the screwdriver in behind here. Try and get a bit of leverage on there and try and pry that off if we can somewhere along the line. This has got to come off the top. There's no actual bolt on the back of this, I don't think. I'll just double check. No, there isn't. It just pushes into a hole. So there's no bolt on the back of there. So this has to come off from both sides here. So we'll have to try and manoeuvre this. And this actually comes off away from the boss itself. However, I think I might have to turn this round slightly, lift it up, move it round so we can get to the actual cylinder holes so we can tap these bolts through and they'll come out comfortably. I'll turn the camera off, I'll move this round, try and get it into position, and then we'll come back and see if we can push them out. Okay, so I've moved the frame so it's sat on the back bench so I can sit down and explain to you properly about this bit here that we've just undone. Right, they're quite tricky. As was all put together with copper slip when we did it last time, it doesn't guarantee that they'll come apart easily. These are the two large bolts that were in the back. what did I say, there were 24, so 24mm head on those. They sit in the back, one comes out through there, one comes out through there, right? They sit in there, and then there's some shims on those to hold them in place. And then this is the actual height adjuster on the front. They've got a couple of conical watchers or spring washers. They like, go together like a banjo, sits on there, and that gives us some adjustment when we're going up and down. These are the two 13mm over this side. They just hold that in on there with some washers. So we can collect all these things up and put them in the parts bucket. Now, I did say when you take these things apart, take some photographs if you can, so you make sure you know where everything goes. However, with this one, as we were doing it, we're tapping, we're pulling, we're moving around, and then boom, everything falls out. We've got shims on the floor, on the bench. I couldn't tell you where they all came from, so you haven't really got a clue. You just need to watch a video when we do this and we put them all back together, and we can show you exactly where everything goes then for each cutting head, because they are sometimes slightly different. So we'll just do a quick one to just show you all the bits that you should have and where they should go. Right, I'll put these in here, and then I can take this bit off. Now, this bit's supporting the centre of the cutting cylinder, so I'm going to have to put my hand up through there. Just be wary, if you've like backlapped these in recent times, they'll still be very sharp and you cause yourself an injury. Right, that's come off, and then as you can see, that's sat down. Right, this is the bearing on here. Bearing, it's in pretty good nick, it's spinning round, there's no problem with that. We put plenty of grease in through this little grease nipple at the top, and that keeps that lubricated all the time. We do get bits and pieces. Look, we've got, I can see we get on here, we've got bits of grass and string and line and whatever else we get on there. They all need cleaning off. So it doesn't matter how careful you are, you just pick these things up when you're mowing. Now with the bearings, those bearings are good. They're great. We've got the race inside there and the actual bearings here, and they'll be fantastic. But because we're stripping it all down, we'll change those. There's no point in leaving them on. There's no point in stripping everything down, sharpening it all up, putting it all back together, and 2 weeks into the season having to take them all apart again to replace these bearings. We've never had any go under normal circumstances. We change them every single year, and I've never had a set of bearings go unless there's been a fault somewhere else, as in with a seal or somebody not adjusting them properly, etc, etc. So we just take them off and we replace them. But that's that bit out the way. Now, one little bit of work left to do on here is to separate this. This has to come off from here. It sits in, as this one did on here, little conical shapes, it's pushed in. So you just need to get a screwdriver in or a little piece of dowel in and just tap it from the back and release that. And once that's released, we can just put it in the bucket. We'll turn this round, show you the other side because it is slightly different. Show you the other side, we'll take that apart, and then hopefully we should be able to get the cylinder out, and then we can sort of lay everything out on the bench, see what we've got, and then think about grinding them up. Right, we've turned the cutting head round, and I'm going to sit down and try and do it from here, just so that you can get a different angle on there and see what I'm doing. The bolt behind there is a 24. We can get a 24 spanner on it in there. I've pushed the spanner in, and I can lock it on. So I've got a photograph of that to show you, and I also got a photograph of the hole in the cylinder, which you'll probably see anyway when we take the cylinder out. So we can get that on. Well, first of all, we'll take off these two 13s. I was looking over the other side then, I thought it was the other way around. And if you can hear the doors rattling, my goodness, it's windy at the moment. We've got a storm brewing, so we're down here hiding away, taking these apart to keep out the bad weather. So, right, we'll take these off then with a 13. Hopefully it should come off quite easily. Even easier if I turn them the right way. It's a bit strange doing everything backwards. Right, yeah, they're easy enough. See, they're easy. They're copper slip when they go back together, and they're not sitting in any of the wet or the mud. So they're down, they're out and in the dry. Right, we've seen those before when we did the other side, so I just put them straight in the parts bucket. And again, you don't have to use the same hardware when you go back. There are a few things, these specialist washers and shims and the bolts that go through, we have to use those, or we have to buy new ones, and they are expensive. So you want to try and take good care of those. Don't get hitting them with a metal hammer trying to get them out. Use a piece of timber and ease them through. Okay, So that's that off, that's freed that. We could probably do, I don't know if I can do it like this, take this off, just give something to release. Now, if you're worried about us not taking these extra bits off and things, we don't have to. After 10 years or so, these cutting heads, they start to wear a bit thin. We can take all the hardware off, everything, put it all one side. We can have these shot blasted, repainted, and they're as good as new and they're good to go. You can even get companies that refabricate these tops and things. So that's great, but we don't need to take them off for these videos. We're just basically getting down to sharpening, new bearings, putting everything back together. So I'll just have a little tap at this side as well. Oh, that one came off a lot easier. There you go. So that's that. We'll put that in there. Now, as you can see, that's just in there. There's a little pip that just goes through there. We copper grease that as well, just to make sure when it sits in there, it's lubricated. So it's not really going to move anywhere, but it just makes it easier to get out. We've broken so many of these, it's unreal. Right, so now we move on to the 19s. And we'll get this out of the way. I think this is the right way, isn't it? Yeah, it is. See, sometimes you're lucky and it will just undo. Like that one, we didn't have to bother getting in at the back. So that's that one off. And then this one over here, just to be awkward, I'll bet you any money, this one will stick. Yeah, that's solid. Oh, goodness me. There you go, hear that brake. And that's well and truly off. Now these cutting heads, they do look a bit dirty, but I think I said before, we have pressure washed them all off. Once they're all clean, you need all the parts, you have to clean them again because they get so filthy. Right, that's those bits and pieces in our bucket. Now this is ready to just be prized off. I'm gonna have to cut the video here because as I prize this one off, the cylinder's going to drop, and because I've got this turned round so I can show you how everything works, unfortunately I've got nothing supporting the cylinder in the middle. So we just have to start to ease this off. See if we can get the little wash off there, that's it. And I'll just take this rubber bit off and I'll show you what's in there actually before I do that. Now that's the adjustment. When the cylinder's sat in there, this is what you adjust to adjust the tension on the cylinder. They can sort of wear and they have a tendency to slide as the bearings get worn. We change the bearings every season, like I said, and it cuts down a lot on that. The bearings don't tend to wear in a season, and we don't really have to mess with these. But when you're setting them up, you adjust the tension on there and it just keeps everything nice and tight. Right, you saw me get the one off the other side. I'm just going to loosen this off now and get this out, and I'll turn it round and then we'll lift the cylinder out and you can see that. I've actually still left this end boss on over here just to show you what happens. You've got to be careful with this. Try and keep it on your bench wherever you can. That's why I didn't take it apart when it was the other way around, because I've released everything over here. I'm literally going to tap this bolt to my left. We haven't got to worry about lining the holes up with the back of the bolt there because the cylinder's just going to drop out. That's how it works. So I'll just move round. We'll just give it a bit of a shove. There you go. And it's out straight away. That's how easy it is. So we can then move that out. That's the cylinder out, and then pull those bolts out. That's the bolt there, so that's how it fits with that one shim on the back. So if you're not looking, if you're quick enough to see them before they fall, you'll see how they go. That's that one shim on the back of there, and then should be one up here. This one might take a bit more persuading to get out. Again, just use the back of the hammer to do that and pull that one out. Then start to move. Two washers come out of there. There's the bolt, there's the shim that fits on it. They're all covered in grass, grease, dirt, grime, whatever. We'll just clean them up as we go, and then hopefully, oh, that's it. There's another shim. We've got a bit of a shard of metal on there. I don't know if that's off the bearings or outer race or something, but that needs to have a look at that, don't we? We've got some more over this side, so obviously something started to break down in there. We've got this on here again. We just need to tap the back of this to release it. And we're seeing there, like we had on the motors, if you watch the video where we took the actual cutting heads off, this is the spline, the drive spline. So these cylinders fit on either way, and the drive spline goes in there, and the bearings on the cylinder, and the race sits in there, and then we have this on the back, and that adjusts the pressure for when we're changing it round. Now, again, you get your screwdriver in there, give that a little bit of a tap from the back, and out it comes, and then we put that in the parts bucket, and then I think we're just about done. We just need to clean everything up and get it off. Oh, that's just come away around. How easy is that, eh? That's convenient. So that's come out of there, so we'll put that in there. That can go in there. We'll put everything out on the bench, and you can see exactly what we've got. Well, that's all the bits and pieces we've got then. We've got the main case over here. We've got the bosses, the cylinder, plenty of life left in this cylinder. We'll grind it up. We've got a season's worth left in there. The bottom blade and bottom blade carrier. There's a bit of life left in the bottom blade, but it's not for us. We'll just put a new one on. I'm not stripping it down to replace that halfway through a season. So we'll put a new one on there. We've got a load of shims. We've got washers, different sorts of washers, brackets, everything. It's all in there. We need to get it all cleaned up. We need to put it back in the bucket. Then we'll get everything sharpened up, and then we can do a whole video on putting the thing back together. So make sure you give me the thumbs up and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you get an alert every time a new video comes out. I'll put all the details that I can in the description below, and if you've got anything nice to say, put it in the comments section. If you know any more about these than I do, then put that in there as well, please. Or unless there's anything else you want to know about these units, pop that in there, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I really do appreciate you watching. I'm looking forward to the next one already. So thanks again. I'm Jimmy the Mower. I'll catch you on the next one.